Sodom and Gomorrah, two words synonymous with sin and divine wrath. We all know the story. Fire from the sky, cities destroyed, and Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt. But what if I told you the real mystery of these cities isn't about sin, but about the fire that destroyed them? What if, behind the ancient legend, lies a real and far more terrifying catastrophe? Today, we'll set aside morality and dive into the worlds of archaeology, geology, and astronomy. We'll explore what truly could have wiped an entire civilization off the face of the earth. And believe me, the scientific facts might prove to be even more captivating than the ancient texts. Let's transport ourselves to the Middle East, to the fertile Jordan River Valley, approximately 3.5 millennia ago. According to the Bible, this was once home to flourishing city-states, including Sodom and Gomorrah. The official biblical account detailed in the book of Genesis states that God punished the inhabitants for their wickedness, raining down sulfur and fire upon them. Lot and his family were warned by angels and fled, given a strict command, do not look back. But for scientists and archaeologists, this story isn't an endpoint, it's just the beginning of a major investigation. Where exactly were these cities located? And what kind of fire from the sky could have been so devastating? The search for answers has led to astonishing discoveries. So how does any serious investigation begin? With the crime scene naturally. In the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, this task proved to be a persistent mystery for generations of scholars. For decades, archaeologists scoured the arid lands around the Dead Sea, desperate to find even the slightest trace of these legendary cities. But the Bible, our primary guide, proved surprisingly sparse on specific clues. It spoke of the Jordan Valley, describing it as fertile, like the garden of the Lord. Yet precisely where in that valley? No one left any exact coordinates. This ambiguity naturally spawned countless theories. One of the most popular theories suggested these cities of sin now rested at the bottom of the Dead Sea, swallowed by its waters after a catastrophic earthquake. A captivating notion, right? Yet, modern underwater surveys, using sonar, failed to uncover any ruins. The enigma remained unsolved until researchers' attention was drawn to a particular mound in Jordan, a massive ancient tell known as Tell el-Hammam, and this very site quickly became the prime suspect in our ongoing investigation. So, what exactly made this particular mound capture such intense interest? First, its location. Tell el-Hammam sits precisely where ancient texts indicate a major city should have been, in the fertile southern Jordan Valley. It was a veritable metropolis for its era. Second, its sheer size. This wasn't merely a settlement, but a colossal city-state that dominated the region for millennia. Its vast area and formidable fortifications attest to its wealth and influence, perfectly aligning with the biblical depiction of a prosperous Sodom. But most importantly, the timing. Archaeologists determined the city flourished during the Middle Bronze Age. Then, circa 1650 BCE, life there abruptly ended, suddenly, catastrophically. This date perfectly aligns with the timeline traditionally associated with the stories of Abraham and Lot. It all clicked. The location, the size, and the timing. All that remained was to start digging and see what secrets this land would reveal. When archaeologists began their excavations, they were immediately confronted with a profound mystery. The city hadn't merely been destroyed, it had been abandoned. And not gradually, but abruptly, virtually overnight. Most baffling of all, it remained uninhabited for the next 7 centuries. Just imagine that, 700 years. This fertile valley, an ideal place for human settlement, became a desolate, shunned land. Common wars or earthquakes simply don't have that kind of lasting effect. People almost always return, rebuilding their lives and homes on the same spot. But here, something entirely different occurred. Something that instilled a deep, superstitious dread and branded the land as cursed for centuries. What could it have been? The answer lay buried deeper, beneath the layers of earth. But the truly captivating discoveries awaited them deeper within the cultural layers. Archaeologists unearthed a chilling 5-foot-thick layer of ash, charcoal and debris. It formed a stark line, separating a once thriving city from the utter desolation that followed. This was a veritable time capsule, preserving the final day of el-Hammam's existence. But this was no ordinary fire, not even close. The evidence they were unearthing was simply staggering. The heat of the catastrophe was so intense that adobe brick walls literally melted. Even ceramic shards, the remnants of pottery and vessels, had vitrified into a glassy mass known as slag. To give you some perspective, temperatures exceeding 100 degrees Celsius are needed to achieve such an effect. A typical city fire, even the most intense, simply can't generate that kind of heat. It was clear some kind of infernal furnace had been at work, and scientists were determined to uncover its origins. Scientists also uncovered human remains, and their state was perhaps the most shocking discovery. These weren't orderly burials. Instead, they were skeletal fragments, pulverized into countless tiny pieces. Imagine the scene. Bones were literally churned together with layers of ash and building debris. It looked as if people weren't merely killed. They were violently ripped apart by some monstrous force, then instantly entombed under scorching ash. The condition of some skeletons clearly indicated instantaneous death. There were no signs of attempts to escape or hide. The catastrophe caught the inhabitants completely off guard. Whatever had happened, it possessed a power capable of not just levelling buildings, but also tearing human bodies apart. So, what exactly was this force? Let's examine the theories just as the archaeological investigators did. A military invasion? Ruled out. No Bronze Age army possessed weapons capable of melting pottery and bricks across an entire city, all at once. What's more, after a successful conquest, the victors usually move in. They don't abandon a city for 700 years. What about a volcanic eruption? Again, no. The nearest volcanoes are hundreds of kilometres away, and crucially, no traces of volcanic ash, typical of such events, were found in that archaeological layer. An earthquake? While it could have toppled walls, it fails to explain the extreme temperatures or the utterly pulverized skeletons. The pieces simply didn't fit together. No known terrestrial disaster could explain all these strange and horrifying facts. And so, scientists turned their gaze upwards, to the sky. Then a radical new hypothesis emerged, one that, at first, sounded like pure science fiction. What if the destructive force didn't come from the ground, but from space? What if the city was annihilated by a falling meteor or asteroid? This theory immediately seemed to explain many of the anomalies. However, upon closer inspection, a significant problem arose. There was no impact crater at or in the vicinity of el-Hammam. A major cosmic impact of that scale would inevitably have left a massive crater. So, the researchers refined their hypothesis. They proposed not a direct ground collision, but an atmospheric airburst. This is an event where an asteroid or comet enters the atmosphere at immense speed, superheats from friction, and explodes high above the ground, never actually striking the surface. Humanity already has a well-documented example of such a catastrophe. Cast your mind back to 1908, to an event in Siberia known worldwide as the Tunguska phenomenon. Over the vast, uninhabited taiga, an incredibly powerful airburst occurred, levelling over 2,000 square kilometres of forest. There was no crater, yet the destruction was absolutely colossal. Now consider this. The power of that explosion was estimated to be thousands of times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And now, imagine something similar, or perhaps even more powerful, detonating not over an uninhabited taiga, but over a densely populated river valley. Such an explosion would instantly generate two things: a blinding flash of light, incinerating everything in its path, and a supersonic shockwave that utterly obliterates everything it touches. This theory felt chillingly plausible. It explained the immense temperatures, the widespread devastation, and the complete absence of a crater. All that remained was to find direct concrete evidence. So scientists began searching for these clues, a kind of cosmic fingerprint within the layer of destruction, and find them they did. The primary evidence arrived in the form of what's called shocked quartz. This isn't your everyday quartz sand. It's a mineral whose crystalline structure has been deformed by incredibly high pressure and extreme temperatures. Naturally, it forms under only two conditions: a nuclear explosion or a meteorite strike. Since nuclear bombs weren't around in the Bronze Age, the conclusion was inescapable. Finding shocked quartz within the catastrophe layer became a powerful argument for the cosmic impact hypothesis. This was direct physical proof of an event involving an extreme, near-instantaneous pressure spike, precisely what you'd expect from the shockwave of an asteroid explosion. But that was just the beginning. As scientists delved deeper, examining the catastrophe layer under a microscope, they stumbled upon even more astonishing discoveries. They found microscopic particles that simply shouldn't have been there. These included tiny spherules of molten iron and silicon, as well as minerals that only melt at incredibly high temperatures, like iridium and platinum, elements far more common in asteroids than in Earth's crust. What's more, they even discovered tiny nanodiamonds. These diamonds typically form when carbon is subjected to extreme pressure and temperature, followed by rapid cooling. All these findings acted like a cosmic signature, a calling card left by an extraterrestrial visitor. They unequivocally confirmed that a powerful high-temperature explosion had indeed occurred, intense enough to melt and vaporize both the incoming cosmic body and significant portions of the Earth's surface. But what about the biblical fire and brimstone from the heavens described in the book of Genesis? This theory also sheds light on that vivid and terrifying detail. Imagine this: after an atmospheric explosion, incandescent fragments of the asteroid, along with molten soil and rock particles, would continue to rain down. To anyone witnessing this, it would have appeared exactly like a fiery downpour from the sky. Furthermore, many asteroids are rich in sulfur compounds. Upon exploding and burning in the atmosphere, these would have produced a pungent, suffocating odour that ancient people could very well have described as burning sulfur, or brimstone. Thus, the scientific model of an atmospheric airburst doesn't contradict the ancient text. Rather, it offers a remarkably precise physical explanation for it. It appears legend and science are beginning to converge. And here's the cherry on top, the final piece of the puzzle that explains the strangest detail of this story: why the land remained desolate for an astonishing 700 years. The answer lay in the region's geography. Close to el-Hammam is the Dead Sea, one of the world's saltiest lakes. The cosmic airburst that occurred over this region must have lifted and instantly vaporized a massive amount of salt water. This superheated, salt-laden mixture then rained down on the entire surrounding area, accompanied by a fiery downpour. This literally salted the topsoil, rendering it toxic and utterly unsuitable for agriculture for many centuries. It explains why any survivors, if there were any, could not return. The once fertile garden of the Lord was transformed into a saline desert overnight. And now, for the most astonishing part. In 2021, a groundbreaking article was published in the prestigious scientific journal Nature. It was signed by dozens of scientists from various fields, ranging from archaeology to plasma physics. They presented undeniable evidence that el-Hammam and the entire surrounding region were utterly destroyed by a cosmic airburst event. Imagine this for a moment: an ordinary morning, around 1650 BCE, people going about their daily lives, and then, suddenly, the sky to the west ignites, brighter than 1,000 suns. Seconds later, a colossal shockwave hits, obliterating everything in its path. The air temperature instantly skyrockets to several thousand degrees. Cities burst into flames like kindling. People and animals are instantly vaporized. And what about the famous story of Lot's wife, who was turned into a pillar of salt? Scientists now suggest it wasn't just a metaphor. The shockwave would have thrown tons of salt from the Dead Sea high into the air. Anyone caught in that superheated, salty storm would have been instantly encrusted with salt and died. Ancient people witnessing such a horrific event could very well have described it as being turned into a pillar of salt. It seems the biblical story isn't just a moral parable. Instead, it might be one of the oldest documented accounts in human history of Earth's collision with a cosmic object. Oral tradition passed down through generations preserved the memory of a real, terrifying catastrophe, cloaking it in religious imagery comprehensible to people of that era. Science hasn't disproven the Bible, it has, instead, offered an unexpected and chilling explanation. Thanks for watching until the end. If you found unravelling this ancient mystery as fascinating as I did, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We have many more historical enigmas waiting for us. What other ancient myths and legends do you think might be rooted in real, natural cataclysms? Share your theories in the comments below and let's discuss.